a man who she abandoned for months to the media, and now presents her mother, Doria, speaking for the first time, telling outright lies about her ex-husband. I mean, this was a calculated attempt against the family.
Tom Bower, the legendary royal author, is sharpening his quill for a new edition of his book set to reveal huge secrets inside Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's marriage.
Tom Bower just dropped a revelation that turns everything people thought they knew about Harry and Meghan's marriage upside down. According to the veteran royal biographer, there's a specific clause hidden deep inside their prenup, page 14, clause 7, that Harry reportedly signed without fully grasping what it actually locked him into. And that detail alone changes the entire picture in a big way. Once you understand what that clause really says, a lot of recent moves suddenly stop looking random. It starts to explain why Meghan quietly brought Sunshine Sachs back into the fold in January 2026. It also lines up with claims that money has been shifting behind closed doors since as far back as 2022. And more importantly, it sheds light on why Tom Bower is warning that Harry could be at risk of losing far more than most people realize.
Well, you know, Piers, you're the first person to say how limited Prince Harry is, unfortunately, and how his wife trades off her husband's fame and fortune, or not so great fortune now. I mean, this is the problem, but we're still interested because, after all, he's a great character in our modern day.
Before breaking down the clause itself, one thing has to be made crystal clear. Tom Bower isn't some tabloid voice chasing clicks or throwing out wild rumors. He's a former barrister and a BBC investigative journalist with over 4 decades of experience going after powerful people who thought they were untouchable. This is the same man who helped expose Robert Maxwell and dug into Mohammed Al Fayed's business dealings. So when he speaks, people in high places listen. He also peeled back the layers on how Simon Cowell's empire actually operated behind the scenes. That's important, because when Tom Bower releases information, it isn't guesswork or internet noise. It's cleared by legal teams and built to stand up under pressure. His work has a reputation for being tight, careful, and thoroughly checked from top to bottom. For his book Revenge, Bower didn't rely on rumors or vague claims.
And so he became hypersensitive and blamed the media for the crashes of his relationships, never thinking that they could have something to do with himself. So he's a very complicated, depressed, unintelligent man who is seeking a role and has got really nobody on whom he could rely, which is in the end where Meghan stepped in. I mean, a needy man met a woman who could help him with his needs.
He carried out more than 80 interviews with people who worked directly with Meghan, including palace staff, Hollywood insiders, and legal professionals tied to her contracts. These weren't distant sources. These were people with first-hand access and direct involvement. He doesn't lean on anonymous online chatter. He builds cases the same way he did as a lawyer, using documents, timelines, and facts that can actually be verified. So when Tom Bower says he's seen evidence of specific prenup clauses, he isn't speculating. He's spoken directly with legal professionals who were involved in drafting royal marriage agreements. He also dug into how British royal protocol clashes with California law, and that's where things start getting messy. What he uncovered on page 14 helps explain why Sunshine Sachs, a firm known for handling one very specific kind of crisis, suddenly reappeared without much noise. This is where the high-profile divorce strategy starts to come into focus. Most prenuptial agreements are pretty straightforward. They spell out what each person brings into the marriage, how shared property would be divided if things fall apart, and sometimes rules around spousal support or timelines for protections to kick in. Simple, clean, no drama on paper.
Very aggressive PR for the Sussexes, got way beyond herself, because she really doesn't understand the British royal family or Britain, but understands how to project her clients. And so I think she got it wrong by leaking it, or even letting anyone know about it.
And of course, the news today that Harry's memoir is going to be published in the near future will just alarm the royal family here in England about what he's actually going to say to earn his money.
Royal prenuptial agreements play by a completely different rulebook. These deals are built to protect crown assets, properties held in trust for future generations, and even rules about titles after a separation. They can include language about public behavior, media appearances, and long-term image control. For example, the agreement between Charles and Diana reportedly laid out very specific terms about her title after their split. These documents aren't casual paperwork you skim and sign. They're carefully structured to lock down reputation, assets, and future outcomes over the long haul. Every sentence matters, every clause has weight, and nothing is accidental. But Harry and Meghan's situation came with one massive curveball that changed everything: California law. Under California's community property rules, anything earned during the marriage is treated as jointly owned. That includes streaming deals, media contracts, and even money inherited after the wedding date. And that's where things stop being simple and start getting real complicated fast.
But I do think that when you're mocked so publicly as they've been, their value begins to nosedive pretty quickly. And I don't think they're finding any more sources of income.
Last week, we brought to you fresh news that Harry had been staying at the San Vicente bungalows to take a break from his family, despite owning a sprawling Montecito property together with Guesthouse. And this week, those rumours are intensifying.
According to Tom Bower's sources, the prenup includes a clause meant to deal with this exact legal clash. And this is where things take a sharp turn. The clause reportedly doesn't just say, split everything down the middle and call it a day. Tom Bower says it contains very specific language tied to intellectual property rights, and that detail changes the entire balance. That means control over the stories being sold, the Sussex brand, joint ventures, and even material connected to Harry's memoir, Spare. Once you see it through that lens, a lot of recent choices stop looking random and start looking calculated. Moves that seemed quiet or low-key suddenly feel very deliberate. All of this reportedly falls under a clause that Tom Bower says strongly favors Meghan's position. Why? Because she's listed as the business manager for their joint ventures. She negotiated the deals, handled the structure, and under California law, combined with the wording in that prenup, she holds the primary claim to the revenue streams they built together. That's not emotion, that's paperwork. But here's what Tom Bower calls the most damaging detail of all. This clause was not part of the original 2018 prenup. According to his sources, it was added later through a prenup amendment, and Harry signed it without closely reviewing it, trusting Meghan completely.
I think personally, they've separated their professional lives, but I think what's really a great problem for them now, as of in the last few weeks, is that Meghan has got no real income anymore. She's finished.
Prenup amendments happen more often than people think, but this one may have changed everything in a major way. Couples update prenups all the time after major life shifts, starting a family, buying property together, or launching new businesses. The original agreement gets adjusted to match the new reality. But in Harry and Meghan's case, the timing of this amendment is what really raises eyebrows. According to Tom Bower's investigation, the prenup was amended in 2020, and that timing is not accidental. This was right as they were stepping away from royal life, relocating to California, and lining up major entertainment deals. On the surface, updating financial paperwork during a big transition makes sense, but this amendment did more than tweak numbers. It shifted control in a serious way, and that's where things start to feel strategic. Bower spoke with lawyers who worked on Meghan's first divorce from Trevor Engelson, and they all described the same pattern. She was precise in negotiations, questioned every clause, and didn't skim anything. She didn't rely on a single lawyer either. She had a full team reviewing every detail. That's not casual, that's calculated. Meghan learned a key rule early on.
Well, Meghan herself.
And Meghan herself.
In the months before she met Harry, was setting up paparazzi pictures in London. She now acts as if the paparazzi are literally the devil incarnate.
She begged the paparazzi to photograph her, and they wouldn't. And when they did, she says, "Oh, I don't want to, I'm hurt." And that ridiculous story about how they first met, the whole thing was a tissue of inaccuracies, to be polite.
Because what do you make of that? Because as you know, Harry was always very insistent.
Protect your earning potential at all costs. When she divorced Trevor, she exited clean because finances were carefully structured during the marriage. Fast forward to Harry. The Netflix deal landed in September 2020, followed closely by the Spotify deal. And suddenly, that 2020 prenup amendment starts looking a lot more important than people first realized. Their foundation and business structure were also set up right around the same time, and that timing matters a lot. According to Tom Bower, the prenup amendment was signed smack in the middle of this business formation phase. Under California law, Meghan already had a claim to half of what was earned together. But Bower's sources say this amendment handed her something even bigger: control. She's listed first on multiple business registrations, including Archewell. More importantly, she reportedly negotiated a clause that gives her majority ownership of the brand if they ever separate. That's not just about money, that's about who holds the keys. Once you see that, the structure starts telling its own story. Bower also spoke with members of Meghan's former legal team from her first divorce, and what they shared reveals a clear pattern. This approach didn't start with Harry. It dates back to 2013, when she divorced Trevor Engelson. She made one thing very clear to her lawyers back then. She wanted an exit plan that left her fully independent. No loose ends, no shared assets forcing ongoing contact, and no financial ties dragging things out. The goal was a clean break that protected both her career and her income.
So many surprises, by the way, tucked away in your book. Everybody is already buzzing because you reveal that Simon is not a fan of Jennifer Lopez. I was not aware of this. You say he can't stand her. So set the record straight for us, Tom. What's his beef with J-Lo?
Well, he just found her just too vain and too self-interested, which seems like he met his own match. But in the end, Simon doesn't really like many celebrities. I noticed when I went with him to the Oprah Winfrey Show and many other places around Hollywood and elsewhere, he's a rather shy guy. He's always afraid of being associated with people who are bigger than him or who might put him in the shade. But in the end, he's pretty critical of people. He doesn't like Elton John. He doesn't like many of the people who are really famous in the music business. You know, he's critical.
Bower also uncovered that Meghan first hired Sunshine Sachs, a high-level PR firm, back in 2017, right when she started dating Harry. And Sunshine Sachs isn't just any PR operation. They specialize in high-profile crisis management and brand protection, especially during major life transitions, and now the timing suddenly clicks. Sunshine Sachs built its name handling high-stakes situations for celebrities when everything is on the line. They've managed public image during major separations before, including guiding Katie Holmes during her split from Tom Cruise, and they were involved in several other headline-making breakups in 2020, right after Meghan and Harry initially stepped away from the firm. At the time, the official explanation was budget cuts, but Tom Bower says sources inside the firm told a very different story. According to them, this wasn't about money at all. Sunshine Sachs wasn't pushed out. They were let go because Meghan wanted direct control over the narrative through Archewell's in-house communications. That wasn't downsizing, that was consolidation of power.
As the fairy tale Prince Harry and Meghan Markle embarked on in 2016 become an absolute nightmare for them. Despite marrying in St. George's Chapel in Windsor, it seems like life hasn't been so rosy for the couple. They have gone through endless challenges, the vast majority of which are all self-inflicted. And this weekend, we had some new news that seems to kind of reiterate the idea that Meghan Markle, she wants to go back to the past. She wants to relive her glory days because she has hired Sunshine Sachs as her new PR representatives, who were representing her back in 2016. And at the same time, Harry is in the UK fighting for a court case that really has no bearing on any of this, but we have heard endlessly that he wants to reestablish himself.
Now fast forward to January 2026. Meghan brings Sunshine Sachs back into the picture. Why then? Tom Bower says the reason is straightforward if you understand how separation-related PR works. You bring in specialists 3 to 6 months before any formal move. That's when narratives are shaped, storylines are planted, and public sympathy starts getting positioned. But Bower says the real signal isn't just the Sunshine Sachs rehiring, it's what Meghan has been doing financially since 2022. That's when she launched American Riviera Orchard, her lifestyle brand. And here's the key detail. It was set up as a completely separate business entity, filed solely under her name. That structure didn't happen by accident, and it fits neatly into the larger pattern he's been outlining. According to Tom Bower, the trademarks don't include Harry at all. And that detail matters. Meghan has also been spotted attending business meetings in Los Angeles on her own, without him. And if this feels familiar, that's because it mirrors the exact same playbook she followed before her divorce from Trevor Engelson. Build an independent professional identity. Lock in solo income streams. Create a setup that doesn't financially depend on a spouse.
At that moment last year, she was about to promote her Netflix series and didn't want to firstly be seen with Harry, and secondly didn't want to go somewhere where she'd appear cheap and give it gratis. And this year, she is desperate to be seen.
Yeah.
And that's why she turned up. So I think she has a major problem, financially and professionally. And I think that Harry has a problem because he's lost his charity centre Bailey in Africa. He's better up, and all these commercial deals are declining. I think that his reputation is somewhat toxic, and I think Invictus is his only lifeline, and there'll be problems with that too.
I mean, we've seen people leaving Invictus recently. I think you mentioned the Disney special. Does the Disney special at all?
Bauer stresses that the prenup alone doesn't tell the full story. The real picture shows up when you track the financial moves Meghan has made since 2022. Take the Netflix deal as a clear example. It was widely reported as a $100 million agreement, but that number was never a lump sum paid up front. Entertainment insiders explained to Bauer how these deals actually function behind closed doors. That $100 million figure represented a maximum payout, only achievable if all contracted content was delivered successfully. They completed the documentary series and Meghan's cooking show, but the animated project Pearl was cancelled, and several other planned projects never moved forward. According to Bauer's sources, the total amount received from Netflix was closer to $40 million before the deal was downgraded to a first-look arrangement. And once you understand that structure, the financial strategy starts making a lot more sense. So where did that roughly $40 million actually go? This is where the timeline starts getting real interesting. In 2022, as several projects began falling apart, Meghan started filing trademark applications for American Riviera Orchard as a solo venture. At the same time, she brought in lawyers to set up separate business entities outside of Archewell. That reported $38 million in debt. Bauer says that wasn't reckless spending. It was strategic financial restructuring. According to Bauer, the Montecito home is titled in a way that offers protection under California homestead laws. Investments were shifted into separate accounts and assets were quietly reorganized. Bauer spoke with financial advisors who work with high-net-worth clients preparing for separation scenarios, and they all pointed to the same thing. Everything Meghan has done since 2022 follows a textbook asset protection strategy.
And what would Diana think of Harry attacking William in that way? She'd be appalled by her son's behavior. And that was, again, so nauseating, the way he kept on bringing in Diana. Diana, who appealed to the media all the time, who phoned journalists secretly, who brought Martin Bashir into her office, who cooperated with Andrew Morton, who kept on calling Richard Kay. I mean, this is ridiculous.
The American Riviera Orchard trademark was filed in her name only, not jointly with Harry. Her podcast deal with Lemonada Media lists her as the sole proprietor. Even the children's book, The Bench, was structured as a solo project, with no financial link to Harry at all. These weren't random decisions. They were clean, deliberate moves. Bauer identifies 2022 as the real turning point. That's when Meghan shifted away from joint ventures and leaned fully into solo projects. And that's also when she stopped appearing publicly with Harry, unless it was contractually required. Once you line it all up, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. That's the moment, according to Tom Bauer, when she began quietly executing her exit strategy. Every move, from business filings to carefully managed public appearances, was designed to lock in independence and protect her assets well before any formal separation by 2023. Nothing was rushed and nothing was accidental. Everything Meghan had been building behind the scenes was finally lining up. According to Bauer's sources, her independent ventures were already fully operational, with contracts signed and trademarks secured entirely under her name. She had positioned herself so that even if Harry attempted to challenge anything later, the structure of her businesses, combined with the prenup, would shield her completely. Bauer says the strategy itself is textbook, but what stands out is just how precise the execution was. Every step Meghan took mirrored the same approach used during her first divorce: separate income streams, solo business filings, and a carefully managed public image that kept control firmly in her hands. She continued appearing alongside Harry only when necessary, but behind closed doors, she was steadily locking down her financial independence. Meanwhile, Archewell continued operating, but the balance of power had clearly shifted.
Well, I do think the Sussex overdrive is unbelievable, but I mean, I don't think that he is going to get back in. I mean, I think that there are two reasons. One is I think that William wouldn't allow it. And secondly, the moment he got back to America, he immediately promoted Disney and his trip to Disney World, which showed that he is very commercially minded, which we'll get into later on, which makes it impossible for him. And of course, Meghan wouldn't come back to Britain.
Meghan's name appeared first on official documents, giving her legal authority over decisions and brand usage. Sources told Bauer that even profits from joint ventures were structured in ways that placed her in the primary position, while Harry was pushed into a secondary role. Once you see the full layout, the strategy becomes impossible to miss. Tom Bauer also uncovered that Sunshine Sachs returning in January 2026 wasn't just about PR. It was about setting the stage for the next major phase. Divorce-related PR, Bauer explains, is all about timing. You bring the firm in before anything becomes public, so the narrative is already shaped and controlled. Public perception, in many cases, matters almost as much as the legal paperwork itself. According to insiders, Meghan has been quietly working with Sunshine Sachs to refine media messaging and prepare for possible legal challenges. Stories aren't leaking by accident. They're being placed with purpose to build sympathy, credibility, and long-term brand protection. At the same time, the framing subtly positions Harry as being in the weaker spot. Bauer stresses these aren't random whispers, they're calculated moves. These narratives reflect a long-term strategy that's been unfolding for years. Financially, the groundwork laid since 2022 created strong safeguards. Her solo ventures, trademarks, and contracts are all structured to remain hers if a separation ever happens. Even real estate decisions, including the Montecito property, were titled in ways designed to maximize California homestead protections.
Apparently, Prince Harry is already talking to divorce lawyers.
So this is kind of interesting. This is the woman that the papers are citing for this reporting is a longtime royal insider, a socialite. She's been right. I've been following her because she's great TV. She's been right about a lot. And she's claiming she's heard from several sources now that he's hired a lawyer, and it happens to be somebody who's a great divorce lawyer and specializes in divorce.
Every dollar, Bauer says, was planned for well in advance of any possible split. He also points out the quieter strategy at play, maintaining a polished professional image while reducing joint appearances. By doing that, Meghan steadily increased her leverage without drawing attention to the shift. Public appearances, solo interviews, and carefully selected media coverage all reinforce one clear message: independence. She's projecting self-sufficiency on the surface, while the financial structure underneath legally locks it in. That image isn't accidental, and the paperwork backs it up completely. Another major factor here is intellectual property. Bauer's sources confirm that the prenup amendment grants her ownership over content created through joint ventures, including media series, books, and brand-related projects. That detail carries serious weight because it determines who controls the future of the work itself. This setup ensures that even if existing contracts or streaming deals keep generating revenue, she controls how profits are distributed and how the content can be used. Control doesn't just mean income, it means authority over decisions, licensing, and direction. By the time Sunshine Sachs returned, Meghan wasn't scrambling. She was ready. She had businesses established, IP rights secured, legal protections in place, and the media narrative already aligned. According to Tom Bauer, this is why he doesn't describe the prenup and its amendments as just paperwork. He calls it a cornerstone of a much larger, carefully executed strategy.
And it dovetails on other reports that he is spending a lot of his time in 2 hotels, one of which is in Montecito, another of which is not too far away, as an escape from her. It's entirely plausible. All they've done for 5 years is complain and moan and see themselves as downtrodden victims. That doesn't tend to spur a lot of feelings of love and happiness and close bonding. I mean, I guess in the crisis mode, it might.
Everything from 2022 to now follows the same pattern. Meghan isn't just protecting assets, she's building an independent empire, and Bauer warns that anyone underestimating this setup is likely to be caught completely off guard by how thoroughly it's been planned. For every possible scenario, the moves may have looked subtle on the surface, but according to Tom Bauer, they stack up into a strategy that keeps her secure and firmly in control. Once the media fully connects the dots between the prenup, the amendments, the business filings, and the return of Sunshine Sachs, it becomes clear this was never just about money. This is about power, control, and long-term independence. And that's exactly why insiders believe this story is far from finished. That single clause added through the prenup amendment gave Meghan the legal foundation she needed to execute the plan Bauer has been outlining step by step. His timeline is precise, and honestly, unsettling in how clean it looks when laid out. According to Bauer, Meghan could file for divorce within 6 months of January 2026. Why that window? California law requires 6 months of residency before divorce proceedings can begin, and Meghan has clearly established California as her permanent home for years now, easily meeting that requirement. Bauer explains that the moment divorce papers are filed, the prenup clauses activate automatically. That's when restrictions around titles come into play, asset division procedures begin, and most importantly, the intellectual property clause determines who controls the Sussex brand going forward. If that happens, Bauer warns Harry could stand to lose far more than people expect, including the Montecito property, which may be sold as part of asset division. Once those mechanisms switch on, there's very little room to slow the process down. He could also lose majority control of Archewell and face serious complications around parenting arrangements, since the family are California residents and Meghan is listed as the primary caregiver. According to Tom Bauer, the prenup amendment Harry signed, without fully understanding it, also limits his ability to monetize his own royal story beyond what's already been published. That's a massive shift in leverage, and it puts him in a much weaker position. The parenting side is especially complicated. California family courts usually prioritize stability for children above everything else. If Meghan can demonstrate that she's been the primary parent while Harry is frequently away handling court matters or other obligations, the legal system is likely to support that structure. And that raises the question everyone keeps asking: does Harry actually know what's happening? Bauer's answer may be the most unsettling part of this entire timeline. He believes Harry senses that something isn't right, but doesn't fully grasp the legal setup he's caught in. Bauer points to Harry's behavior in the London courtroom, the visible frustration, arguments with the judge, emotional reactions, and intense distress over media treatment, as signs of deeper pressure. Meghan, Bauer says, isn't seeing the actions of someone confident in his marriage. It looks more like someone who knows something is wrong but can't identify where it broke or how to fix it. Sources close to Harry told Bauer he feels increasingly isolated. His legal team reportedly warned him about the financial risks tied to ongoing court battles. Yet, he continued forward, encouraged to push on anyway. So here's the question that keeps people stuck. Why keep pushing lawsuits that could drain everything unless she already knew those financial burdens would eventually land on his side alone? That's the part Tom Bauer finds deeply unsettling. Once a divorce is officially filed, his final assessment is blunt and chilling. Harry signed away his future on page 14, clause 7. And according to Bauer, he's only just starting to grasp what that really means. Tom Bauer says this prenup clause could leave Harry with almost nothing. Meanwhile, Meghan would walk away with majority control of the brand, the bulk of the assets, and primary family stability. The amendment signed in 2020 wasn't crafted to strengthen a marriage. Bauer argues it was structured for how it might end, and that detail changes the entire narrative. So the big question remains: did Meghan plan this from the very beginning? Or is Tom Bauer connecting dots that aren't really there? Every amendment, every business filing, and every PR move lines up into a clear pattern, but only time will tell if it plays out exactly as predicted. What's hard to ignore is this: the prenup, the amendments, the solo ventures, and the timing of Sunshine Sack's return all point in the same direction. Meghan has built an independent empire with legal protections that keep her firmly in control. And for Harry, this could mark the start of a very difficult reckoning. If this breakdown made you think differently, drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who needs to see this, and hit subscribe for more deep dives like this. I'll see you in the next video.